Okay, I want to talk about why I'm making a phone. Uh, Number one, we see the rise of the dumb phones. There's a clear need for devices that are not so distracting because people are realizing how much time and attention that these modern phones are taking from them, and that is a big deal. In fact, if I could give someone that's using a smartphone too much a phone that was still useful without the distractions, and we could save them a little over 2 hours a day, we could easily save them 30 days a year, 30 full 24 hours a day every year. If they're a heavy user, that could easily double. So there's a huge time savings. There's a lot of sort of talk about stress and other things that are being created by our modern smartphones. So, what do we have as an option? Like right now, we have these, in terms of like alternative, we have like a T9 phones, I call them, phones with a keyboard that looks like this, a dial pad style, I guess you can call it keyboard, where there's no browser, there's no app stores, basically the phones that do nothing. And there actually is a surprisingly few amount of these actual dumb phones. People are looking for them, are trying to buy them. There's also flip phones people are buying. In the US, a lot of them actually have browsers, they have app stores, they have social media. So on one end, they're sort of frustrating to use, but on the other end, they're more distracting than they should be. In the UK, there are devices like the Nokia 105, which I'm showing over here, and which is a totally distraction-free phone. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience. It's what I used when I traveled to Europe, but unfortunately, it's not even available in the U.S. market. We basically all of our 2G network that ran most of our old old dumb phones have largely shut down. And so even if you wanted to use one of these older devices that are simply distraction free, you can't do it because you can't connect it to the network. Now there's like some towers and some locations that arguably you might be able to connect to, but it's a huge hassle. Most people are just not going to go through it. And then if you're traveling, you're going anywhere, the chance you're going to have signal is going to be fairly low. So unfortunately, we don't really have a lot of like really good choices when it comes to dumb phones, even though there's a high demand for them. On the other hand, we have our typical smartphone. There's browsers, there's app stores. It's just full of distractions, and there's pretty much only. This is pretty much the only choice when you're going to look for a phone. I mean, most people are just basically going to get some type of smartphone, and it's either Android or it's iOS. So that's basically what our choices are these days. There used to be more choice. Now we don't have much. But they do have a dynamic keyboard, a touchscreen keyboard, which seems to work pretty well. And everybody knows what smartphones are. But the problem with these smartphones is that, as Bo Burnham here says, that can I interest you in everything all of the time? And he's referring to the internet as a whole in this song he made called "Welcome to the Internet." Definitely check it out if you haven't already seen it. And this is like largely like it explains sort of the philosophy behind what I'm trying to accomplish here. Ultimately, this is not just about creating a phone. It's about creating devices throughout the home that allow you, productivity. It's sort of entertainment to a point, sort of a very minimal level of entertainment, but they're mostly focused on productivity and a lack of distraction. Because right now, it's just like there's just a weight of this like limitless internet. All the beautiful things about it, it's also come with a big downside, which is that it's just overwhelming for a lot of people. It's stressful for a lot of people, and honestly, we spend a lot of time on it. I mean, I have some statistics about smartphone usage, but that doesn't even include the usage of other devices, internet connected devices that we use on a daily basis. So arguably, if I can create a range of, which I'm doing, if I can share, so this like creation of like these distraction-free devices, it can be reducing stress, all this stuff. I need to create a new slide about potential benefits, I suppose. So we really only have three choices right now. On the left, we have these typical, like these flip phones that are really difficult to use. If you've ever used like a T9 typing experience, it sucks. It sucks. It's frustrating. Just trying to send a text message. People communicate by text. It is what it is. And if you're trying to communicate back with a text message, like it's going to be an awful experience. And that's just like, for me, that's been my experience. I was grateful to have the Nokia 105 when I was in Europe, but texting was a nightmare. So, you know, and some people, like, they prefer to text. They don't want to answer the phone. And, you know, it is what it is. So, yeah. So difficult to use, right? But on the positive side, that Nokia 105 didn't really do anything, which was actually a huge, amazing experience to not have the distractions, not have any distraction at all. But also on the downside, I also carried a Palm Pilot with me when I was using that because I needed some extra functionality that these flip phones just didn't have. And on the same side of those dumb phones, they often do more than they should. They often do have web browsers and app stores and everything else just on a small screen. So it's just not a great experience for me personally. You know, if Nokia contacted me to design a flip phone, I'd be happy to sort of help them figure out the best way to do that. But as of right now, we don't have a lot of great options there. Even though more and more people are going to them. On the right-hand side, we have our typical smartphones, which are full of distractions. They do everything all the time. I'm just saying, I have little asterisks as hell because, you know, you have, how many people are just like scrolling on their phones before they go to sleep, and then as soon as they wake up, they're grabbing their phone. They're at work, they're on their phone. You know, it's just like nonstop, constant thing, and we could talk for days about that. But in the middle is sort of what I'm focusing on, which is I want an easy-to-use experience. So taking the best of both worlds and creating a more focused experience. So we don't want to have a typical browser or app store, but we do want to have some productivity-focused devices. And when I say productivity, what I really mean is like applications that help connect with other people, help some study-based applications, things like that. So more of that stuff's going to come down the road, but I wanted to at least sort of try to lay the groundwork for trying to explain what's in my head here. Quick statistics globally, almost 90% of cell phone users are smartphone users, and there's currently, according to this website, over 7.2 billion smartphones worldwide, and it's supposed to just go up in number. So, I mean, there's a huge market for this. People don't have much choice now, so if we give them like a little bit of choice, I don't expect to get a huge market share with this stuff, but I think there's plenty of people who would appreciate a device that doesn't take away so much of their time, but also gives them an easy way to communicate with folks when they need to, and do a couple of, you know, a few other things as well. So the solution is to create a smart-ish device, right? We want it to be smart, but not distracting or too entertaining, right? Typical smartphones are constantly like, look at me, look at me, look at me. Distraction, scroll. And also like just endless amounts of entertainment. You know, that sort of thing about the internet is like, you're never not going to find something entertaining to watch or do. It's always going to be available. So that's the thing. And then we have the ease of use of a smartphone UI, which is familiar. It's very mature. There's been a lot of work by a lot of amazing people for a very long time that have already figured out all these issues in terms of just user interface. Most people are familiar with how a smartphone operates, so it won't be a big transition in that regard. We don't want to have unfiltered access to the internet, and that's how we're going to reduce distractions. So no typical web browser, no typical app store. The reason I say no typical in these cases is because there may be instances where there's something called a web view. So in order to like connect to like a calendar account or certain things like that, there may be a need to allow a sort of a browser that only allows you to like sign into to accounts and things like that, just for those basic productivity based things. Or we'll get into more later, not today. We want a solid calling and messaging experience. That's number one. I've tried other devices that are starting to get into the smart-ish category, and I've had a really tough experience with the messaging experience being very frustrating, the calling experience also being frustrating, because when you're trying to use the keyboard to like dial numbers and things, sometimes it's like literally frustrating on some of these devices. So we do want to have apps that are additional to just like phone calls and messaging, but we want to have them be extremely focused on sort of simplicity, productivity, and we don't want to have these like slot machine type style apps where you're either constantly scrolling to see what comes up next, or these sort of video applications where there's always something else to watch, and it just constantly trying to get you to use these applications more and more and more. We don't want you to use the applications more and more and more. We just want to have the applications that you need when you need them, and then you get back off of your phone. There's some questions about, ideally, some of this is just sort of like ideal conditions. Our first generation of this phone is going to be based on, is based on existing hardware. So some of these things are not really even like relevant, but I just wanted to talk about my thoughts about them, because I think as we move into this space, we're seeing some people come in and have various ideas about things. So my thought long term about keyboards is that I'm not against them, but I also think that the problem's already been solved. So there's, if you go back and look at Steve Jobs' keynote from 2007 when they introduced the iPhone, I mean this was like discussed about like whether a keyboard is really necessary, and the advantage of not having a physical keyboard is that you have more screen real estate, which makes it more useful for dynamic applications, which is just true. You're just restricted to a much smaller screen when you throw a keyboard on a device, and that creates some friction. Also, if we go back in time, it's like there's been an evolution of these devices, and part of the evolution is just figuring out what works best. And so we started out, we had these physical keys that looked like it was like a T9 thing, right? That was sort of like, I won't say the best that we had, but like the primary reason that those were on phones is because people used to call more than they used to text, because texting cost money. so people didn't text very much. So the T9 made sense because all you needed to do was dial someone's phone number. And then with the BlackBerry, they made texting basically unlimited. So having a keyboard made a lot more sense because all of a sudden now you're typing a lot more, and there was no... We just didn't have a good touchscreen experience at this point. I mean, this wasn't even really a touchscreen device at all. If you look at the BlackBerry 7200 and 6200 that I have pictured in the middle, those blue devices, touchscreens weren't really even a thing for BlackBerries. These were not touchscreen devices. You used the click wheel on the side, and you used the keyboard to type. So it made sense for us to have keyboards at that point. And then, I also have my Palm Tungsten C showing up on the right-hand side. And then we sort of went into this like hybrid approach with later devices like this Palm Pre, where we had a touchscreen on the front, but you could slide up the keyboard. Kind of gave people the best of both worlds. People were still sort of used to the keyboard, like sort of BlackBerry style keyboard or Palm Tungsten C style keyboard, and they were sort of transitioning into this world of touchscreen devices, and that keyboard made sense to keep it there. So there's a bit of nostalgia there for folks, and going back to a physical keyboard is often a very much an adjustment period. So like I want to say though, like BlackBerry, if you look on the left, that's the BlackBerry Passport. I happen to think that BlackBerry's hardware has been phenomenal. The last several devices that they've put out hardware-wise, like I can't complain about them at all. I think they're beautiful devices, absolutely beautiful. I think they had a software problem. I don't think they had a hardware problem at all. And a lot of their devices had a keyboard, but they also managed to keep the screen size reasonable and usable. So that's why I say I'm not against it. If I could partner with BlackBerry and sort of bring back what's great about BlackBerry, and what is great about BlackBerry, then I would be happy to do that. I don't think anybody's going to give me that opportunity. So, I don't think that's going to happen. So I think, for devices like custom devices in the future, basically touchscreen keyboards are fine. They've already solved this problem. People are already used to them. There's no reason to necessarily go backwards into a touchscreen or into a physical keyboard sort of situation. You could argue that there would be a cool case for it, but it's just not necessary. I just want to talk about the camera also, because the camera is generally useful, but I personally don't love the front-facing cameras. They obstruct the screen. So we had the notch on the iPhone. Samsung used to make fun of them for that in their commercials, and now they have all these everybody's using like a dot, like a cutout for a camera these days, which I think is unfortunate because it just obstructs the screen. It's just one of those things. I don't like it. It's also a little bit creepy, just constantly having a camera pointing at you. I don't know, like a lot of people are just used to that these days, but it's just kind of, it's a little creepy. But they can be useful. I understand taking a picture with your friends, you can see your friends and yourself in the picture. I get that there's some utility to it. So this first device that we're putting out is going to have a rear camera and a front camera. So, but there's also issues of I don't love there's if you see people at a concert and they're all holding their phones up and they're all taking video of the concert, I like the idea of people being more in the moment. So I'm not huge into having a camera, but if you're going to have a camera on a phone, it should be a good camera. So this is why I'm focused on more modern hardware. So the first version of this phone is going to have a great rear-facing camera. So if you want to take pictures, it's going to take great pictures, and you can easily send them to friends. You can get picture messaging. I mean, I say this because other devices in the market, like, there's a problem. Like, if you want to send someone a picture message, or you want to receive a picture message, you can't really do that on some of these phones, right? Or if you can, it's a bad resolution, or it sends it to your email, and it's like, it's a not a great experience. So with this, you get the best of the sort of smartphone experience in terms of sending and receiving pictures and taking pictures as well. If I had if this does well and then far into the future I was able to create a device, I would be interested in having either removing the cameras or having a good rear camera. I say good, but like, there's a whole conversation about cameras. Because I like this sort of concept of people using older digital cameras, partly because it's more of a focused experience, and also it creates something unique. Like all these like new images all kind of look the same, whereas like, if you're using a retro camera, it kind of produces like more interesting results. It's more artistic in a way. So for me, like, potentially I would have a sort of more interesting camera like that, and possibly just either remove the front facing camera or use a pop-up. So I think this slide is really like optional, because ultimately the device that we're shipping it has a camera. It has a great rear facing camera, and it has a great usable front facing camera, so you just have that stuff to use. But in the future, it would be cool to play around with that. And so basically, what I'm attempting to do here is take the simplicity and focus of the PDAs, personal data assistants, the old Palm Pilots, the old Blackberries, which were extremely productivity based. Like, they used to call BlackBerry crackberries because of how productive that would make you. And I think that these companies, BlackBerry, Palm, for example, I don't think they understand what they actually had. When the iPhone came out, they just freaked out, right? Because like, everybody basically went and tried to be an iPhone. The iPhone and their competitors are more focused on entertainment-focused devices. Your typical smartphone is an entertainment device, in my opinion, primarily. And then so basically I was just saying, PDAs and early Blackberries, they're great because they didn't include distraction-based applications. They didn't. And that's what it's actually, that was like the magic to it. And I don't think they understood that. We want the best of modern smartphone user interface. People are familiar with, they're used to. Simple, it's easy. With the simplicity and focus and productivity of a PDA. So it's going to go into two like sort of phases. Phase one is creating a distraction-free device, which I've done. And phase two is really making that device more productivity focused. So it's going to start very simple applications, or sort of like your base applications, but it will eventually expand. For example, I have an application I'm working on, already works on desktop, but I'm migrating it to the phone, where it allows you to, like, when you open it up, it just opens up a one of those like background relaxing study videos. Like if like the type that have like a fireplace in the background, or like a cool just scene with some relaxing music, that kind of thing, to help you study and focus, or have something in the background, like that type of thing, where it's not just saying, here's YouTube, the application. Like, we're not going to have that because, YouTube's just going to lead to that endless entertainment. So, but we want to bring some of that in a very focused way. So having an application that just randomly selects these sort of relaxing videos gives you something that is useful without the distraction. So that's just one example of where we're headed here. And I think that's it. So thanks for listening. Hopefully this did record. And yeah, I don't know. I would consider this right now an early alpha build of this phone. It works. It functions. It's usable. If there's people who are like willing to be early adopters and wouldn't mind dealing with some of the quirks and I don't call them bugs, but just sort of quirks of a not super polished product. Like you just want a distraction-free phone, like let me know. Because technically I can get that out to you now. But if I don't know, we're just looking for like ways to get people excited about this, and because I feel like this is sort of my calling for a lot of reasons. So I think that's good for now.